Yeah, those guys did a really great job that week. And if you have a chance to talk to any one of them or pull them aside and ask them about their experiences, I highly encourage you to. They have some great stories to tell from that trip. But anyway, we're in the middle of a message series called Turn It Around, and what we've been doing over the past couple weeks is we've been taking a look at different areas in life and recognizing that there's, a couple different ways of looking at these different areas. There's the way that most people see these things, the way that most people have a perspective on these things, and there's God's perspective. And we've been kind of looking at them and saying, which end of the telescope are you looking through? The way that most people look at these things, or the way God looks at these things, and asking why does it really matter, and do you possibly need to turn it around and look at these things in a different way? Well, this morning we're looking at an area of life that's a critical area. It's something that all of us desire. It's something that every single one of us, we want this, we're looking for it, we're trying to find it, we're trying to get it some way, somehow, but we all have a different perspective of how we look at this. What we're talking about this morning is freedom. Okay, we all want freedom. We all like freedom. We all love that part from Braveheart, right? Where William Wallace says you can take our lives, but you can never take our freedom. That's right. You guys got it. See, I told you I could work that into the message. So anyway, yeah, we all love that part of the movie because we all value freedom. We all want freedom. But we have different ways of looking at freedom. There are different ends of the telescope that we can look at freedom through. And there's one way that we're going to explore this morning that's brought to us by King Solomon. Now, it's not isolated to him. This is a point of view that's existed ever since mankind was created, and it's pretty typical among people today, but we're going to look at it through the eyes of King Solomon, who, just to give you a little background, he was the third king of Israel, and when he started his rulership, he was obedient to God. He sought God for wisdom. He asked God to give him wisdom so that he could be a just ruler over God's people. But, over the course of his kingship as a ruler over God's people, he started to turn away from God and slip away from God. And he took the wisdom that God gave him and started to ask questions like, if we take God out of the picture and look at life through the narrow margins of birth and death, how can I use my wisdom to figure out what really matters in this narrow span of time? If we just remove God and life is just this short span of time here on earth, what really matters? What makes life meaningful? And this was Solomon's pursuit for a portion of his life, where he sought to figure out what mattered in life if we just take God out of the picture and it's just this thing between birth and death. Okay, so when Solomon sought this, what he had in mind was that this is what freedom is. Freedom is when we seek to live this life, in a way that just kind of makes sense to us. And so here's sort of a picture of how Solomon saw freedom. In Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 10, he says, I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all of my work, and this was the reward for all my labor. We'll stop there. So this is the way that King Solomon saw freedom. That freedom was this matter of just whatever my eyes saw that they liked, I just go and get it. And whatever my heart desired that I wanted, I just go and get it. And that's how he lived his life. And my guess is that this is probably the way that most Americans and most human beings view freedom. That freedom is when I make the choices and decisions for my life. That real freedom is when I see something that I want, that I can go and get it. If I have goals, I can follow those goals. That I'm the one who makes the decisions about how I spend my money and how I spend my time and how I use my talents and my resources and everything else. And the more I have freedom to choose those things, the more free I am. And this is how most people look at freedom. And when these things become limited, when somebody constrains my choices, or authorities or rules or laws or consequences or whatever else constrains those choices, well, then I feel like I'm less free. Okay? And that's the way I think probably most people view freedom. It's just kind of this thing that I can just kind of go at it however I want. And the only real constraint that we put on it is, as long as I'm not hurting anyone else. I'm free to do whatever I want to do as long as what I do doesn't hurt anybody else. I can spend my money, time, talents, resources, however I want, as long as I'm not hurting anybody else. And to us, most of us, that's what freedom is. Now, that's a pretty popular view of freedom. Here's another one. I'll turn this thing around and look at it another way. Jesus defines freedom in John 8:31. He says to his followers, he says, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Okay, so here's Jesus saying, if you're really my followers, you hold to my teaching, you're my disciples. What he's saying here is that his true disciples, his true students, the people who are really following him, are the ones who do whatever he says. They're the ones who value what he values. They care about what he cares about. They go where he says to go. They do what he says to do. And Jesus is saying, when you do this, you're truly my disciple. And when you do this, you're free. That this is free. That when you do this, you come to this knowledge of this truth and you become free. And so this is a very, very different way of looking at freedom. So Jesus is saying, the more that you constrain yourself, the more you follow me, the more you obey me, the more you give and align every single area of your life with my word and my will and my way, the more free you become. Now, I think we can all recognize, hopefully, if you've been following along this long, you can recognize that these are two very different ways of looking at freedom, right? These are like complete opposites. These are as different can be. Like one of them is saying, freedom means that I do whatever I want to do, and whatever I see, I go and get it. And whatever I desire, I try and get some of that. And I make the decisions for my life about how I spend my money and my time and everything else. And the other view says, well, freedom really is, when you constrain your life and you do whatever Jesus says, and you don't choose those things and do whatever you want and follow your heart wherever it goes. When you constrain your life to what Jesus says and his word and his will and his way, then that's freedom. And they're very different. And so the question this morning is, why does it even matter? Why does it matter how we look at freedom? Why does it matter which perspective or which end of the telescope you look through? Why does it matter? If somebody's happy just following their heart and doing whatever they want, just following whatever goals that they want, and they're not hurting anybody else, well, what's so wrong with that? And if somebody else, wants to follow Jesus and do whatever he says and put their lives under his control, and that makes them happy and they're not hurting anybody, well, what's wrong with that? Why does it matter? This is goldbug. Goldbugs are family fish, and goldbug has lived his entire life from the time he was born in some kind of container, whether it was an aquarium or a bowl or a cup or whatever it was. He's lived his entire life in some kind of a container. And goldbug has spent most of his life looking longingly out of that container to the outside world. And goldbug sees what's outside of the container as freedom. And goldbug's heart has always been to get some kind of taste of freedom. From goldbug's perspective, the end of the telescope that he's looking through, goldbug sees freedom as being outside of the bowl. Okay? Goldbug has never been to a movie, has never felt the wind through his scales. Goldbug's never been able to flop around in the grass on a hot sunny day. Goldbug's never climbed a mountain to a beautiful overlook. Goldbug has missed out on lots of experiences in life that he feels like he's entitled to, and that to Goldbug is true freedom. So this morning, we're going to set Goldbug free. Okay? No, yes, we are. If you're from PETA, raise your hand. We're going to set Goldbug free this morning. He doesn't trust me after first service. Now, does Goldbug's perspective of freedom matter right now? Yes. Why? Because we know in a matter of a minute or so, Goldbug is going to be dead. Because Goldbug was not created, was not designed. Look at that. He's healthy and well. Don't worry. Rest assured. I know what I'm doing. Maybe. Because Goldbug wasn't designed to live outside of the bowl. Okay? His perspective on freedom matters because if his perspective on freedom is that freedom is found outside of the bowl, we know that if he lives outside of the bowl or attempts that, he's going to die. And that's not exactly freedom, is it? He knows that life outside, well, he doesn't know, but we know that life outside of the bowl would be extremely limiting because he wasn't designed to live outside of the bowl, okay? He wasn't designed to extract oxygen from air. He was designed to extract oxygen from water. If he tries to live outside of the bowl, he's going to end up less free than he would be if he lived inside of the bowl, if he constrained himself to the principles by which he was designed. He was designed to be a fish. He functions as a fish. He breathes as a fish. And he was made to live in water. And when he lives in water, constrained to the principles of his design, he is most free. Okay, we got that. We get that. I could belabor that as long as you'd like, but I think we're on board. Okay, so when he's in the bowl, he's most free. Now, could it be that when we, as human beings, live according to the principles of our design, that we are most free? And when we ignore those principles, we become less free. Is that possible? And what I want to point out this morning is that as we compare the Solomon kind of view of freedom, the way that most people see freedom, and Jesus' view of freedom, as we compare these things, what we're comparing is not living a life where we make our own choices and God makes our own choices. We're not comparing a life where we have authority or where God has authority. We're not comparing a life where we're free to sin or we're not free to sin. What we're comparing together is living a life where we ignore the principles that we were designed to live by, or living a life where we align ourselves with the principles we were created to live by. And one of these two things is going to bring us more freedom than the other. And so this is why this is so essential. And so the first thing that I would suggest is that it might be possible that when we choose to free ourselves from the principles by which we were designed, we actually become less free. Okay? Just like Goldbug, if he tries to free himself from the principles of his design and live life outside of the bowl, he obviously becomes far less free because he's dead, and that's pretty restrictive. And we can recognize that with ourselves, with physical properties. There are physical properties that we have. We might not know why we have them, but we find ourselves with these physical needs that if we don't satisfy those needs, we don't become free. And even though we know that, we still try to free ourselves from those things from time to time. I know, like, every one of us here, at some point, maybe some of you right now, have tried to free yourself from the constraint of sleep. Let's see your hands. Yeah. And if you don't know who you are, the person next to you does because you're grumpy. We know that we need sleep. We can't live, we can't function, we can't be free to be what we were meant to be, what we could fully be unless we get sleep. And we try to free ourselves from that constraint of sleep, and we think, well, I'm free, I'm going to stay up late, I'm going to watch one more episode of whatever show that you're watching, and then like one more, and then one more, because you know that gets you, like, you just kind of have to keep watching each of them until you finish the season. It's 2 a.m, you have to get up for work the next day. And you think that you're free while you're doing that until you wake up the next morning and you realize, this doesn't feel like free. And you drink like 8 cups of coffee, and even though it's the middle of winter, you have your windows down, your air conditioning cranked because you're trying to stay up on the way to work and not die. Anyway, you're not free in that condition. Even though you try to exercise freedom by ignoring your need for sleep, you end up less free. Okay. You can recognize this with this. Is it possible, though, if we go beyond that, if we go one more step beyond that, and say, is it possible that beyond just physical needs and our physical design, could there be other design aspects of you and of me and of every single human being, that if we don't align ourselves with these other design aspects, we will also become less free? And then let's take a look back at Solomon. Okay, so Solomon, if we remember back, he was that guy who was trying to figure out how to live freely and see what mattered in life and see what made him most happy and most satisfied. And so he's just doing whatever he wanted and seeking after his heart. Let's see where that got him. If we pick back up where we were in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, Where'd that get him? He says, I chased after whatever my heart saw, I chased after it, yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningful. No. Everything was great. Everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Here's Solomon. He tried it all. He took off all the constraints. He said, I'm going to ignore every single principle that there might be out there. I'm just going to go for it. Whatever's out there, I'm just going to go for it. Ignore any confining principle that might exist. And that's what he called freedom. And at the end of it, we find this broken, disappointed, empty human being. And could it be that it's because Solomon ignored these principles that he was created to align his life by, and by ignoring these things, became less free than what he thought he was originally going to be? See, Solomon ran after satisfaction. Solomon realized that he needed satisfaction. He saw all these different ways to be satisfied. And if you read through the book of Ecclesiastes, you get a taste of some of that. The guy had like 700 concubines, and more palaces than you can shake a stick at. Because we do a lot of shaking. Anyway, we don't stake chicks. But anyway, he had a lot of palaces and all kinds of money, all kinds of stuff like that. And so he ran after everything. He was seeking satisfaction. At the end, here's a guy who had everything that somebody's heart could desire, everything that your eye could see and desire, and still wasn't satisfied. I think all of us can recognize that we have this thing inside of us. We don't know where it came from. We don't know why it's there. It's just this thing inside of us that just desires satisfaction. We just want to be happy. We just want things to be pleasing and to make us happy and to have some kind of peace and some kind of joy in life. And the world has millions of ways that it offers us that kind of happiness and satisfaction. And maybe you're not as hedonistic as Solomon was, but chances are there's some kind of satisfaction that you've been chasing after, are chasing after, or have chased after at some point in your life. And you've kind of ignored the principles that maybe are meant to govern where we're supposed to find that satisfaction. For a lot of us, we're not as hedonistic as Solomon. We just look for, things to make us happy. We just kind of fill our lives up with stuff to make us happy. Whether it's, travel or clubs or sports or watching football or, whatever it is. We just have all these little fleeting desires, these fleeting things that we engage in that make us happy. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with those things, but what I'm wondering is it possible that those weren't the things that were ultimately meant to satisfy us? We feel free. We feel free to pursue all these things and spend our time chasing after all these things. But at the end of the day, do they make us free? And some of us, our pursuit of satisfaction and happiness hasn't even been as pure as that. Some of us, we've been chasing our desires and satisfaction down all kinds of dead-end roads. We've chased them into bars, and we've chased them into bedrooms, and we've chased them into all kinds of places that we're going into thinking, I'm free to go here, I'm free to do this, I'm free to enjoy this, but then ended up realizing this doesn't make me as free as I thought it would. And I wonder how many of us here this morning, the things that we were chasing and thinking that we were free to chase them to find satisfaction, we know deep in our soul that it has not made us more free. We know that all those little happiness things that we're just filling into our lives from every end, that all it's done is distracted us from this deep gnawing sense, this deep gnawing hunger that says, this isn't it. This deep, gnawing hunger for satisfaction. And no matter how much we fill into our life, it never gets filled, but all it does is distract us from it temporarily. And all it does is make us hungrier for more. And so we keep chasing after all these little fleeting pleasures and desires. And I wonder how many of us, we've gone down some of those roads that, when we started down the road, we were like, this is freedom. I'm free to make this decision. I'm free to go, go to bed with these women, go to bed with these guys. I'm free to drink this stuff. I'm free to do this. I'm free to have this affair. We were seeking satisfaction. We thought we were free, but then, man, something happened. Something broke. The other shoe dropped. A relationship got hurt. Somebody got hurt. A relationship with our kids, with our parents, with friends, with coworkers. Something got broken. Something got wrecked. A house was lost. Finances were destroyed. Or maybe you realize that thing that you were free to enjoy got its claws into you. This thing that you thought you were handling freely to enjoy, that thing turned around and got its claws into you. And now you feel like you're a prisoner of that thing. Whether it's porn or sex or a relationship that is extremely toxic and damaging, or whatever it is, you've gotten some kind of addiction. This thing has just gotten its claws into you. And so whatever it is, wherever you are on the spectrum where you've been seeking satisfaction, has it made you more free? I mean, is that freedom? Is it possible that we were designed to be satisfied? We were designed to seek satisfaction, just like Goldbug was designed to seek oxygen, but there are specific ways that we're supposed to seek it. There are ways that we're designed to be satisfied, and when we ignore those things, we end up being less free. Solomon wasn't just exercising his freedom to seek satisfaction. He also exercised his freedom to seek security in whatever way he saw fit. He built the military of Israel to a higher, stronger, bigger point than it ever had been before. Yet, at the end of his time as king of Israel, his kingdom had erupted into civil war, and his kingdom was torn into two and devastated beyond what it had been before. And I wonder, we think that we're free to seek security however we want, but I wonder where are we seeking security? Every single one of us, if we're honest with ourselves, we know we want security. At the end of the day, we want to know that everything's going to be okay. We do. We want to know that we're going to be healthy, that we're going to be alive, that our loved ones are going to be healthy, that they're going to be alive, that they're going to be okay, that they're going to be making wise choices. We want it. We want some kind of security, but we live in a world where we know that's just not the case. That's just not realistic. We live in a country that has one of the strongest militaries on earth, but we can't 100% protect ourselves from every terrorist yahoo out there. We live in a country that has one of the strongest economies in the world, but we know that our 401k isn't 100% safe. It only takes one little thing for that to completely vanish. We live in a world that has one of the most just police forces on earth, yet we know that we are still susceptible to crime and violence. People are getting shot in movie theaters now by random lunatics. The more and more we read the news, the more and more we realize how unsafe we are and how little control we have over our own security, yet we still desire it and we seek security in numerous different ways. We think if we can get enough money, if I can just get enough money, then I can buy a house in a safe neighborhood. I can send my kids to a safe school. We can buy like a huge mega SUV that like roars down the highway like a tank so that we can get into any kind of accident and nothing will happen to us. If we just have enough money, we can keep our family safe. We can protect the people that we love the most. And so we run after security thinking I'm free to seek security wherever I want. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to seek security for your family and for yourself. That's wise and you should. But where are you looking to find your ultimate security? What is it that you are relying on that you can say, at the end of the day, this is what I'm trusting to make sure that I'm okay? This is what I'm trusting to make sure that my kids are okay. What is it that you're looking to? And as you feel like you're free to seek that security wherever you want, where's it leaving you? You know, maybe some of us are just like running after jobs. If I just had this job, I'll be able to get this money, then I'll be able to do this for my family. Or we're just working more and more and more hours to get more and more money. 'Cause the more money we have, the more secure we can make our families. You know, and maybe some of us we've lived enough to see the demise of the security measures that we've put in place. We've seen our family members get sick, and we couldn't do anything about it. We've lost houses, and we just had to stand by and watch them go because we couldn't do anything about it. And we just feel devastated by it, and it makes us feel even more insecure. We get filled with anxieties and worries. And as we think that we're free to seek after these things, are we actually free? Or could it be that we were designed with this need for security, this need to know that everything's okay, but only when we seek it in alignment with our design, how we were designed to find security, only then are we really free? Solomon also seemingly was seeking after some kind of significance to be the greatest ruler of Israel, the greatest king ever, the greatest guy ever. You know, he was just like going for the gold. The guy bought himself everything that his eyes landed on. He had the best of everything. And as we saw at the end of it, here's a guy that was just empty. A guy that was just broken. Here was a guy who was just seeking to prove himself to the world, to somebody. At the end, he's broken by it. And I think every single one of us can recognize that deep down we have this need to know that we matter. We have this need, this gnawing need inside of us just to know that we have some kind of worth. And the world offers us a million places to find that worth. I work a lot with middle school and high school youth, and I see firsthand the toll that our society's values takes on them. I see firsthand the toll it takes. That what our society says, this is what makes you valuable, this is what makes you have worth. I see the damage that it does. I see young people who are raised in our society to believe that their value, their worth is directly proportional to how much they look like what society says is beautiful or attractive. And statistically, out of a room of 100 teenage girls, out of 100, 90 of them hate what they look like because they don't feel like they measure up to that image. And they look in the mirror every morning and hate the person that's looking back at them. They've been designed to have this need, they have this longing to know that they matter, but they're seeking it in completely the wrong place. And it's destroying them, absolutely destroying them. And I wonder how many of us here this morning are looking for our value in the absolute wrong place. I know that the destruction that it brings. You know, whether it's through how you look, and you're just trying to measure up and doing everything that you can, and you're just exhausting yourself in the process. Or you're just trying to prove to everybody else that you're this version of yourself that you want to be, but at the same time you know that you're not. You know, you want everybody to think that you're as funny as you pretend to be, but deep down you're afraid that they're going to find out that you're not. You want to prove to everybody that you have as much money or you're as successful as you pretend to be, but deep down you're terrified that they're going to find out that you're not. Or you want everybody to know that you're as good at your job as you pretend to be. And all the while you have this nagging feeling that one day they're just going to find out that you're not as good as you're pretending to be. All of it symptoms of trying to find our value and our worth and all these other places that we weren't meant to find it. And could it be? Could it be that actually doesn't make us free? I mean, that condition of seeking your value there, is that making you free? Or could it be that we were created, we were designed Yes, to seek our value, to seek our significance, but only when we do it within the principles of our design do we find true freedom. And so I move on from this to suggest maybe the things that we thought would make us free are making us less free. And what if when we confine ourselves to the principles of our design, when we live the way that we were designed to live, what if it's then that we find complete freedom? Freedom to be the people that we were created to be. Freedom to enjoy freedom that we were created to enjoy it. What if, like Goldbug, it's only when we confine ourselves to the principles of our design that we're truly free. Just like when we sleep, we're free to be fully functional, sharp, paying attention, problem-solving kind of people. What if it's the same way with where we find our significance and our satisfaction and our security? You see, Jesus says that it was God who created us, that he was our creator. In John chapter 1, John says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. By him everything was created. Apart from him nothing was created that has been created, and the Word became flesh. That Jesus created, he designed, he hardwired us. In Colossians chapter 1, verse 16, it says that everything was created by Christ. Everything was created for him. It's in him that life coheres. It's in him that everything comes together. It's in him that everything makes sense. And what if the reason that Jesus came, as we read about him in the New Testament, what if he came to say, this is how I designed you to live. These are the principles that I designed you to live by. And it's only when you live by these principles do you find the freedom that I created you to enjoy. This is exactly what Jesus says in John chapter 10, verse 10. He says, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. Jesus comes into a world where people are exercising freedom in all these different ways. And he's just watching them broken, restricted, prisoners of sin, prisoners of shame, prisoners of guilt. And his heart's desire is to say, no. That's not how I created you to live. That's making you less free. I created you this way. Live this way. You will find freedom. Jesus created us to experience satisfaction. It was his desire. He wired us so that we could find satisfaction. But only when we find it his way, according to the principles we were designed by. Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I'll give you rest. My teaching is easy. My burden's light. You'll find rest for your souls. Jesus is saying, you're running after all these things, seeking happiness, seeking satisfaction in all these ways, but that's not how I created you to be satisfied. So I created you to be satisfied, but it's only when you follow me and live my way, when you have a right relationship with me, when you live humbly the way that I created you to live, when you serve others, when you're generous, the more selfless you are, the more giving. Jesus said, the Bible says it's more blessed to give than to receive, and it's not just like a happy little paradigm to like trick people into giving. No, it's like, Jesus is like, no, like I designed you to give, and I designed you so that actually makes you happy when you do that. And so Jesus came, he says, live life my way. This is where satisfaction is. You will find yourself satisfied when you align your life, every aspect, every component of your life with me. When you spend money the way I say to spend it. When you spend your time the way I say to spend it. When you use your gifts and your talents and your experiences with the way that I'm calling you to use them, then you will find satisfaction. It's there that your hearts will be satisfied to the depth I created them to be satisfied to. That's where you find joy. That's where you find peace. Jesus came to offer us a real picture of security. Jesus says, I created you to desire security. You weren't designed to live in a broken world. You weren't designed to see your children die from cancer. You weren't designed to see the money that you saved and put away, to see that disappear. You weren't designed to be disappointed. You weren't designed to be hurt. That wasn't my goal. So don't seek your security, your ultimate security, and the things that this world has to give you. He said, one day, It won't be today, but he says, when I return, I'm going to fix all of that. Everything that was broken. Everything that's broken, I'm going to fix it. And my desire is to restore you to a world where you never have to worry about your kids getting sick. You never have to worry about losing a loved one. You never have to be worried about somebody getting in a car accident. You never have to be worried about whether your 401k is going to be there the next day. You never have to worry about whether your job's going to lay you off. It's like, look forward to that day. When you fix your heart on that, when you focus your heart on that day, your anxieties vanish. Your worries vanish. Jesus says, he says, don't chase after like clothes, and don't chase after food, don't chase after all these things that everybody else chases after. He says, seek first my kingdom and righteousness. He says, this is where your security is. Fix your eyes on this and experience freedom from anxiety, freedom from worry, because you know how the story's going to end. And Jesus said, you know what? I didn't create you guys to find your significance in the eyes of other people and trying to live up to the standards of other people or the standards of this world. In John 3:16, he says, God so loved the world that he sent his son to die. Jesus wants us to get a picture of our worth. Jesus, this morning, wants you to get a picture of how valuable you are. Every single one of us longs to know, do I matter? And Jesus says, yes. Not because of how you measure up to anybody else, but because I say that you matter. You're worth enough to me that I'm willing to die a death on the cross to pay the punishment for everything that you have done, are doing, or will do that falls short of my divine standard. I'll pay for all of it. Pay for all of it just to show you this is how much you matter to me. Will you trust me? Will you trust me? Will you realize that through this sacrificial death, through this pain, through this, will you realize that I trust you enough that you give up all the other things that you're seeking, all the things that you are calling freedom, and return to me and trust me that I'm the one who desires to give you freedom. You matter. We all matter. He loves you eternally and infinitely. And when we get this, when you get that you matter because you matter to the Creator, you're freed from worrying about what anybody else thinks ever again. And as you continue to process your insecurities, and as you process your pretensions before Christ and say, you know what, Christ, I know that I matter because I matter to you, you're freed. You see, Jesus said, whoever's freed by the Son, they're free indeed. This is true freedom. This is the freedom that we were created for. Freedom that we were meant to experience. I read a story, an article by a guy who writes for the New York Times. And he'd traveled to Cambodia because he was doing an article on forced prostitution in Cambodia. In Cambodia, like a lot of other places in the world, there's so much poverty that girls are sent out into the streets to beg for their families, and while they're out there, a lot of times they're abducted and forced into prostitution. So this guy travels there to do research and understand the problem firsthand, and while he's there, he decides to take his resources to buy the freedom for two of them. And so he goes to a brothel and talks to the brothel owner about two of the girls there and says that he wants to buy their freedom, and they negotiate for a price, and he pays for one, and she goes willingly, overjoyed, just realizing what this means, that she can now truly be free, just goes joyfully into freedom. The other one he has to negotiate the price for, and then the lady running the brothel is really doesn't want to sell her, but finally agrees to it. And so he goes to the girl and says, "Hey, I paid the price. You're free." And the girl refused to leave. She had recently pawned her cell phone just to be able to pay for her basic living necessities. And she refused to leave the brothel without her cell phone. She refused true, complete freedom over a phone. Because from her perspective, freedom meant having a phone. From her perspective, you couldn't be free without a phone. Having true freedom meant that you had your cell phone. And so she was willing to forego true freedom for this fleeting trinket that she was calling freedom. Now, which one of those are you? Are you the one who, when you recognize the freedom that Christ offers, you go willingly and gladly and say, if you're willing to die in my place, I know that you're good and I know that you're trustworthy and I'll do whatever you say to do and I'll go wherever you say to go? Or are you like the other one? That there are things that you're holding on to and you're calling them freedom and you think that it's freedom. But what you're doing is you're exchanging true freedom for trinkets that will eventually destroy you. Which one are you? I hope for some of you this morning who are followers of Christ, who've been living and confining your lives to his principles, that you'd be reminded this morning that you're on the right track and that you have freedom because of that, and to continue on and persevere. And I hope for those of you who've been following Christ for a while and it's started to feel like a fishbowl, and you've started to feel like there's true freedom on the outside, and you've pursued some of those things thinking that you were free to do so. Maybe you've experienced some of the consequences of it. That this morning you'd realize that that's not freedom. That Christ has something so much better planned for you. And some of you this morning, you've never really maybe had any interest in God or Christ or church or anything else. Maybe some of you have captured a glimpse of who God is. The true freedom doesn't mean just living however we want, but that we were created to experience in a specific way. We were designed to experience in a significant way. In a significant way. And I hope for you that this morning, maybe for the first time, you'd make the decision to trust Christ and follow him fully. To make that decision that, you know what? Let the rest of the world do what they will. Let them seek freedom where they will. But I'm going to follow Christ. I'm going to seek the freedom that he offers. Let's pray. Father, I thank you that it's the desire of your heart that we would experience the freedom that you created us to experience. Lord, that you watch us running after all these things, and your heart breaks when you see us crushed by these things that we're seeking apart from you. As we experience the bondage of all these things that we're seeking apart from you. Father, I love that you're a God who you come for us and you welcome us with open arms and you call us back into the lives of your sons and your daughters to be the people that you created us to be. Lord, I pray so much that hearts would be open this morning, that those who are here that have never made the decision to trust you or to follow you, that this morning that they would make that step to trust you, to follow you, to begin living the life that you're calling them to, and begin experiencing the freedom that you created them to experience. And I ask it all in Jesus' name. Amen.